Hello there and welcome to this vlog of June 2022, and today's episode will be titled something along the lines of how to go full regimental with your mercenary unit. Now, if you've watched my previous videos when I've talked about my own mercenary group building over the last it's specifically been over the last couple of years, but in truth I've kind of had the dust counters going on since like the early mid 90s, something like that, but it's only now that I've pulled the trigger and I'm obviously developing the forces. And if you've kind of gone through this journey with me, you'll have seen that like very early days I was like, yeah, I'll probably get a couple of companies. It then kind of manifested into like a battalion, and now we're at regimental level because of course we are. I even think that a few weeks ago I did a video titled something like, yeah, this is the end of my like BattleTech hobby collection or something like that. No, that was to be fair, that was actually before they announced the Wave 3 stuff, so I've done a significant amount more in terms of like force development over the last few weeks. And I kind of saw an opportunity to actually do the regiment with the dust counters, because I think previously, like when I'd been like building it up to the battalion, I kind of just assumed that I'd finish in and around the clan invasion. But recently, especially with the announcements on Wave 3, where they've been giving us a lot of intel on what mechs they're releasing, a lot of those mechs are related into like the FedCom Civil War, which is an era I actually quite like in BattleTech. So for me, I was like, well, I might as well just kind of build the regiment and have the regiment sitting fully like operational in and around like the early 3060s. And that way I can basically have every mech that I am interested in, and they play along all the eras of BattleTech that I enjoy. So why not? I would ask. I can do that. I've got the kind of the space to do it. So it also kind of gives you something to, for want of a better term, look forward to in the project, because I know that I'm not going to get a lot of this like plastic for at least a year, I'd imagine. Probably more than that. I'm guessing we'll kind of get the kickstarted in, I want to say September, October, and then I think we'll probably get delivery in and around that time next year as well. So you may be talking like 14, 15 months, and that's, it's always nice on the hobby side just to know that you're going to get this big package where you can paint it all up and make it look very cool. I think at that time though, honestly, and I know I've probably said this a dozen times before in these videos, but I think then I really am at the end of it, because I don't play beyond 3067. Truth be told, I think BattleTech goes a little bit crazy during the FedCom Civil War. I think that's when all the kind of power creep starts to come in, and a lot of the mech designs start becoming slightly silly. So I think like I can see that where the rot really does set in BattleTech. I know that's a contentious issue, because some people will argue that it never really kind of got any better after 3025, and then there are other people who say that like, the Dark Age is actually a really fun time to play the game or whatever. So that's just my subjective opinion. That's not any kind of empirical fact. All I would say though is that if you're watching me doing videos like this, it's not really an ego trip for me. I do these as like this is a blueprint of how I develop my mercenary unit, and you can do this as well, and then you can live vicariously through that mercenary unit when you develop your forces as well. And you can be as small or as big as you want to be. So for instance, you could just say, let's say if you do just play in the, I don't know, you play in the 3025 era and you just want a company, so that's 12 mechs, and you've got your favourite, say, I don't know, maybe you've got 8 mechs you really like, and then you pad it out with 4 more. That's a really cost-effective way to do things. Obviously, it doesn't take much storage, and the wondrous thing about BattleTech is that you can play really, really cheaply. Like, it's not really an expensive game to get into. It's not where you have to kind of buy like an intro box, which costs you, I don't know, $300-400, and then you have to collect like lots of box sets on top of that and get lots of extra rule books. You can do that if you want to do it. I kind of do that, but you don't have to. You can keep it really, really like small level. If you even don't want to do that, you can play with cardboard standees or bottle tops in BattleTech. It's not really frowned upon. I mean, I think Obviously, you can do what you want on your own gaming table. If you go out a little bit further and get a bit more, say, professional, and you want to get into tournaments and stuff like that, at that point you are going to need models. You are probably going to have to learn the extra rules. So there are lots of different books that you can get that give you like lots of data on like the more advanced equipment, or especially equipment that retcons old NAF equipment that doesn't work properly. They'll they update rules for things like that and say, okay, well, if you don't like AC weaponry, try to use this system instead, because it kind of balances those weapons out a little bit with the energy weaponry. So again, when it comes to the mercenary units, though, you can really do what you want with BattleTech and go in whatever direction you want. I've said this numerous times before. I think it's absolutely the way to go if you are going to collect. Last week I did a video on the kind of the law mercenary outfits to think about collecting, because that's going to be the focus for the next Kickstarter. Oh, sorry, not the next Kickstarter. They're going to release those over the next few months. The Kickstarter is actually all centered around Alpha Strike, which is a different beast entirely. But yeah, there's never really been a better time to do the mercenaries now, because we're getting box sets for them, and whether you want to do an in-law one or whether you want to create your own, you know, you do you. So I do both, as it just so happens. Like I said, last week I catalogued the kind of formal law part of the mercenary units. This is absolutely like my thing. The Dust Counters are the mercenary outfit I created. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm just going to kind of list through the three different battalions that comprise the regiment. They're all reinforced battalions. You've seen a lot of this before. If you have actually followed my videos, you've seen me, I think, probably get up to like 2 battalion level, and that's really where I thought I'd keep it. I was quite happy with having 2 battalions, but again, them throwing nice mechs at me next year means that I really want to expand that and get some of those mechs that they've already announced into this list. Important to say though, this is very much like subject to change, because I think at the moment they've announced like mechs that we know that they're going to get, but we don't know any of the box sets. So you know that usually if the catalysts follow to form, they'll be releasing mechs in groups of 4 for the inner sphere, in groups of 5 for the for the clans, which makes sense because lances and stars, that's how they work, 4s and 5s. So I have no idea what box sets I'm going to get or going to be able to kind of get access to without having lots of waste. For instance, if there's just one mech that I want in a box set, and then I'm not really going to put the other 3 into my forces, like that might make me change my mind and think, well, I might drop that one and put this other one in there. Probably not though, let's face it. I don't think people with my personality type do that. We just tend to throw money at things and see what happens, and just like have a much bigger collection than we ever really planned. So that's fine. Right, anyway, let's get into this. Now, the first battalion, which I've kind of termed the Spearhead and Reconnaissance Battalion. I'm not actually going to go through this much at all, because I've actually documented this, I think, twice in other videos. I think I've actually been through it, and it's absolutely not changed. Well, actually, one lance of it may have changed. I think I brought one thing out, so I'll discuss that specifically. I think I'm just looking at it now, and I think that has changed. But the first 3 companies there, that's Azalea Company, Bandier Company, and Celestial Company, they've been like, that was my original force, right? Like, that's really where I wanted to go, and it's kind of developed from there. They were my, like, for want of a better term, the core battalion that I was creating. Again, I'll give a very quick synopsis. So the first company, Azalea Company, is like a very early days BattleTech company. So you can see there's like, you know, catapults and wolverines and enforcers, marauders. So it's kind of the early day mechs from BattleTech. They do though get some really crunchy mechs later on. You can see there the establishment date there for the Godhead lance is 3028, and that is comprised of a beast of a lance. So that's a King Crab, a Victor, a Warhammer, and an Archer. I tie this all together with my lore for the Dust Counters. So for instance, there's a situation they get in 3028 where a cult tries to take over Mendham, which is the planet that they're from, and they kind of get drafted in to destroy the cult, or to get rid of the cult. And the mech, the two of the mechs that they come against that the cult have kind of procured during their cultish behaviour are a Warhammer and an Archer. So they kind of get those two mechs just by like salvage at the end of 3028 or the campaign at the 3028. So that's just one example. I mean, I'm sad enough to have written lore for every single mech here, and I kind of know where each one comes from. You can see as well that there's quite a bit of detail there on like mech affiliation. So, for instance, High Roller Lance is a Free Worlds League Lance. So when I've painted them up, they've kind of got, I think I've put them like, part of them is purple, and they've kind of got Free Worlds League insignia on them. So I do try to kind of tie everything up as much as possible with the lore for the dust counters. That's really fun, and if you don't do that, you should really think about doing it, because it really gives an extra dimension to your collection. Bandier Company is very much like the post Project Phoenix going into the like the Renaissance. So you see a lot of mechs there that, like for instance the Annihilator and the Marauder 2, which are mechs that are kind of reintroduced back into the Inner Sphere by the Wolf's Dragoons. Again, there's a lot of lore tied into this, which I'm not going to go into now, but you can see both of those mechs are actually piloted by Gladiators, mech warriors. The final lance there as well, which is Hammer Lance, that's very much the lance that they get access to when the clans invade. So if you look at that, it's a Mauler, an Axeman, a Bushwhacker and a Wolfhound. That is like the quintessential like 30-50 lance for the Inner Sphere, so that makes sense. Celestial Company, which is C Company, also stands for clan. You see it's all clan mechs in there. I've written quite a bit on that, weirdly enough, in terms of how they get access to it, because it's not really standard for the smaller mercenary units to have access to clan mechs or vehicles, because they're so difficult for the Inner Sphere powers to maintain. Which really makes sense, because you need like an entire different like process, mechanics, engineering, science for clan mechs, because they're much more technologically advanced. I kind of wrote it into the lore though that they basically dupe clan Smoke Jaguar. They dupe a lance and like a dropship into being their bondsman, and they end up kind of over time collecting. You can see that the dates go right up into 3060, so it's not something they get overnight. They get one lance initially, and then it kind of they build from there. And I do that purely like it's I don't know what the equivalent is with narrative, but it's like the plot armor. Like plot armor obviously means that you protect characters. Well, in this, I'm protecting my kind of reason for having clan mechs in there. So I'm just trying to I try to make it sensible, so it's not too crazy. It's not like, oh yeah, we've got like a battalion of clan mechs or anything like that. You can also see as well that a third of the company here, so that's a Yokai Lance, they're actually second line mechs, and I kind of have it in my mind. It's a lot easier for Inner Sphere powers to do maintenance on second line mechs from the clans, because they are just normal battle mechs really. Like the Omni-mechs are something very different. Second line though are much more in keeping with like a regular old mech from the Inner Sphere. And finally then we've got Daredevil Company. This is really the like the reconnaissance unit. This here, the Sentinel, the Jenna, the Spider and the Mercury are another like procurement that the Dust Counters do. They kind of team up. Well, they're enemies, and then they team up with another mercenary outfit on Mendham quite early on, and the cult ends up actually destroying the other mercenary unit, and the survivors kind of get folded into the Dust Counters, and that's this lance here. This is Moloch Lance. You can see that all the characters affiliated are periphery powers, so it's Taurians and Canopians. Canopians. I always feel like I'm saying that wrong. So yeah, that's kind of the mainstay. They're kind of the touchstone for the scouting unit or the reconnaissance unit. This is the one that I changed then. So Pathfinder Lance. I had some mechs left over from like second line mechs from the clans, and I fit them in there originally. But I've kind of changed the whole narrative, and I've put those, like there was a pack hunter for instance. I've actually put the pack hunter now back into the clan forces, because I'm intending on collecting Clan Wolf in Exile, and the pack hunter is very much a mech associated with them. And what I did instead, I was like, it would be nice to kind of get some of those like faster reconnaissance, early like 3025-esque mechs. So like, you can see that it's the Phoenix Hawk, the Firestarter, the Valkyrie and the Mongoose. I was desperate to get a mongoose in my forces as well. It's one of my favourite mechs, and I just couldn't find anywhere to fit it in the lances. So I thought, what I'll do is I'll just change that, and I stripped the paint from the clan mechs that I had, and again put them back into other forces, and I've just gone like really quite basic in a sphere with Pathfinder lance now. And then just for some extra support there is a Zephyr lance, which is 2 Drillsons and 2 Saladins, and actually the only 2 vehicles in the kind of core battalion, which is the first battalion of the Dust Counters. Next up, and this is where you can see a lot of the stuff now is colour-coded and is not purple, which means it's not been painted. That's because I don't own much of this yet, because it's coming in the 3rd Kickstarter. But the next battalion is the Command and Auxiliary Battalion. The Command Battalion is one of my favourite things I've done for the Dust Counters. It's basically a Lance and then later a Demi Company. A Kodiak, an Atlas II, a Night Star, a Highlander, a Black Knight and a Rifleman. They're called the Glorious 331st, which, if you don't know, is the force that eventually become Clan Wolverine. Long story, I'm not going to go into that now, but the Dust Counters are quite trolly. Like, they're quite cheeky. They're very they're mischievous. Like, Badge is slightly mischievous. It's a bit like of a derpy wolf type character, giving a bit of a grin. You can see that it's on the the main icon for the on my Twitter page and on the YouTube channel as well. I do that almost in mockery of the Wolf's Dragoons, because the Wolf's Dragoons have like quite a derpy badge as well, but it takes itself very seriously. It's this like dragony, wolfy thing with big gnarling, like a maw of a mouth. It looks very intimidating. Whereas what I did, I flipped it like 180, so the wolf, or whatever the Dust Counter creature is, it's not a wolf really, is looking the other direction and basically giving a cheeky smile. I've done that specifically because the Wolf Dragoons just irritate me, so I just kind of see them as the absolute antithesis of what the Wolf Dragoons represent in the BattleTech universe. And because they are a little bit cheeky and a little bit trolly, when they find out, they get access to this quite early. You see that they get it in 3033. It's kind of a bit of a treasure hunting exercise they do. But eventually, when we get into the 3050s, and they do have a lot of drama with the clans, as most people do in the Inner Sphere when they invade, they manage to get hold of a Kodiak, which is, I just desperately wanted a Kodiak in my mercenary force because I love that new model, even though it's crazy. It just looks so cool. And they put an extra rifleman in there as well for good measure. So what they do is, because the original unit that they find, it's from like an old Star League dropship that they discover on a treasure hunt, which is from the 331st. And when they find out that the clans despise both that force and Clan Wolverine, who that force became, they basically put Clan Wolverine insignia all over the command, like Demi Company, just to really irritate the clans, which it would. I don't think anything would upset them anymore. But yeah, it's just kind of their style. It's just what they do, and it's just me being a little bit cheeky. The second Demi Lance as well that we've got, the Demi Company here as well. This is the C3 network. I've been deliberating for a long time whether or not to do the C3 network, and I may have spoke about this when I did the last video, so apologies if I'm repeating a lot of stuff here. I will eventually go on to the new stuff. You can see there's a lot of new stuff underneath this. The C3 network is something I've experimented with, and I was much happier doing it after I'd kind of really... And I did know the rules. I kind of knew the rules. I've known the rules for a long time, but I was like, do I like it? Is it just a little bit silly? Actually, it's not too bad. It's not too crunchy, and it is quite a good equalizer actually against the clans. So I was like, okay, I'll just do it. I'll do like a lance, and then the lance eventually turned into a Demi Company. So you can see there as well. There's a lot of like Draconis Combine influence there, with like the Hatamoto Chi, the Grand Dragon. The C3 network is obviously a Draconis Combine invention, so that kind of reflects that a little bit. Next up, we've got the Black Operations Company. These have been like in my force for a long, long time, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them because I'm sure I've done it before. But this is like a special forces unit they get from St Ives when they're out there operating in around 3029. So it's basically one platoon of conventional infantry, but I say conventional infantry, they are special forces, and then eventually that migrates to a couple of squads of inner sphere battle armour as well, but that comes like way later, obviously during the clan invasion. And then they've got, this is probably one of the most, I think one of the funnest things that I've created here, which is the Demi Company for the black operations, which I've termed the Void Shriekers. And it's basically like a mismatch of like clan mechs, elementals, and like the latest inner sphere tech in and around that like early 3050 period after the clans invade. And I really wanted to do that. I wanted to kind of have a mixed group. So you can see there that there's like just a complete mismatch. There's like a Clan Smoke Jaguar bondsman star there, who they basically they run that Demi Company, but they're elementals. I've then got like a Clan Steel Viper in a Battle Cobra, and I've got two Clan Diamond Shark point commanders in a Blackjack and a Shadowhawk, and then there are two Free Wrestlecog Republic Met Warriors in a Raven and a Locust too. So I really wanted this to be eclectic and weird, and it's kind of like post-clan invasion when they do have access to clan stuff, and they do almost like make allies with the clans a little bit to the Dust Counters. Not allies like they're fighting for them, but I think in my kind of lore, the Dust Counters get taken over by somebody from the Draconis Combine in the 3050s. Somebody who's been in the group for a long time, but she kind of gets elected as leader. And she like really almost like admires the clans. Like she doesn't admit that, but you can tell she admires them, and she kind of befriends the especially like the elementals, who she kind of sees as like these like super crazy efficient warriors. So she kind of builds like a special unit around them. I like that. I think that's quite a fun thing to do. That might be completely like heretical within like the BattleTech lore, but it's just, I don't know. When you do your mercenary companies, obviously the BattleTech universe is big enough for you to do it as you want to do it, and that's what I've done here. But I've actually tried these guys out a little bit on tabletop. I made them very crunchy on purpose, so you can see there's like the Shadowhawk there isn't the regular old terrible version of the Shadowhawk. It's the 5S, which I think is actually a really, really solid Shadowhawk. The Battle Cobra as well, I think is one of the crunchiest mechs in BattleTech. It's really, really powerful. The Locust too as well is insane. I'm really, really like happy with the direction that I took with that. And they're also the lance is all like painted up black, purple and yellow, so it looks quite like cool. Like the Dust Counters are, because they're not a massive group. They're not like the Kellhounds or something like that. They're not like a really famous group. It's just my group. So they are a little bit more intelligible when it comes to like campaigns. They don't just go in all guns blazing. They are very much thinkers, and they do like to kind of manipulate things and do things like Black Ops. So it makes sense that they've got like a task force just for like getting in, doing infiltration. Just little things like the Shadowhawk has, I think, like 1.5 tons of storage in its head. That version does, and that's kind of my like, if they ever had to kind of, I don't know, go and like do a search and rescue, and like literally go into an urban area and get like someone in political trouble out of it. They could just go in. They've got like a safe house in the head of the Shadowhawk, just to kind of get them in there and then just get out, because all those mechs are like pretty maneuverable. The Blackjack not so much, but the Blackjack's there really just to give supporting fire. The elementals obviously are very quick, so they will only be able to attach themselves to the Battle Cobra there, because the Battle Cobra is the Omnimech. So that's the kind of, I suppose, the heart of the command battalion there. Then I've done an auxiliary section as well, and this is where we get into the new stuff. So I'll just scroll down just so we can get all this invisible in the what do they call it in website parlance? It above the fold, or don't go below the fold. So you can see everything here. I think pretty much that I'm now going to be collecting on the like over the next wave 3. So the first company, this is the part of the auxiliary company. This is like what I've called the Displaced Resistance Company, and this is really a mismatch of all those kind of groups and powers that got smashed up by the clans. That maybe it's like I'll give you a for instance. The first one there, which is Die Hard Lance, that's four of absolute. Well, they're not garbage mechs. I mean, I'd say the Flea's actually a pretty solid mech. I don't think anyone's particularly keen on like the Hoplite, the Cicada. Well, the Irby is obviously a very famous mech, but I think it's pretty safe to say it's not very good on tabletop. I've certainly not had much success with it. You probably find a lot more success in like close, like urban combat. But I think generally speaking, the urban mech is just a bit of a nightmare. It's basically got its one big gun on its arm, and that arm isn't very well armoured. So as long as you target that side of it, you blow that arm up, it's just like a walking nothing. The only thing it can do then is shoot an S-laser and kick. It can't even do any punch damage. I think from memory, the Irby does 1 point of damage on a punch because it has no arms. So it just kind of leans in, and that's 1 point of damage. But you can kick with it, so it can be quite useful at that. But it's just slow, and it's just not very good. But what I wanted to do here was to really have like, you see the MechWarrior affiliated give it away really. It's Free Wrestle Cab Republic and Draconis combined. So it's those powers that just got absolutely smashed. And kind of in my mind, when the Dust Counters eventually get to the war zone, which is in 3052, this is kind of a group that's like fighting very resiliently against the clans, but they know they're going to get defeated, especially with those pretty terrible mechs. So the Dust Counters kind of enfold those guys back in, into the Dust Counters fold and protect them a little bit, and then kind of work with them on the kind of the local contracts that they're doing against the clans at that time. It does though develop into something a lot better, and all these mechs here, either they've been announced or I'm like 90% sure we're going to get them. I probably should talk about the colour coding a little bit. So if it's the purple one's a bit weird. The purple one is an eBay lot that I'm trying to get. So the Irby is part of that. So it finishes in about 2 hours. So I'll hopefully have that Irby at the beginning of next week, because I'll have it signed up. But it's for quite a lot of money, and it's on a big lot sale. It's one of the new Irbys as well, and they're quite difficult to get. But there's only one purple mech here, I think. If it's red, that means that it's one of those mechs where we know it's coming, but we have no idea what force it's in. Where it's like that yellow colour, that means it's probably either in the mercenary packs, which have been announced. We know that we're getting those over the next few months. Or it's like, I think, part of the beginner set, which has got like the new Vindicator, and it's got a Griffin in there, so I'll certainly be getting that for the Vindicator. In fact, that Vindicator is listed here, which we'll talk about shortly. If it's green, that means I've got it already. You can see that there are some green models like halfway down here. They are old models though. These are not models that I believe we'll be able to get for a long time, so I've just bitten the bullet and got the old models. So just in case you're wondering, they're the colour codes here. But yeah, you can see on Steel Dragon and the old Triangle Lance, they are a lot more crunchy. Like we've got the Devastator there, Penetrator, Dervish, a Vulcan, a Berserker, which I've had that model for a long time actually, and I've kind of been flitting around where to put him, but I've decided to get him here. A Griffin, a Starslayer, and a Night Sky. One thing to note there, I think the old Triangle, it's probably going to be like a detachment or maybe like a liaison unit from like the Donegal Guards, just because it's got a very Irish feel. Like you can see there that the Berserker is called the Pint and the Night Sky is called the Dram. So that's kind of, there's an Irish feel to that as far as I've kind of built it in anyway, and that's really the physical melee combat lance within this company. So the Berserker and the Night Sky both have hatchets. I think that's right. Yeah, the Berserker has a hatchet, so it's just a bigger hatchet because it's a 100-ton mech. So I presume it does more. It definitely will do more damage, but I don't know off the top of my head what that is. And then next up, we've got what I've termed the Experimental Tech Company. So this is the final company in the 2nd Battalion. This has been fun to make, and I'll be able to paint quite a bit of this because I've either got access to the mechs already, or I've just bought them all on the old models. You can see that just for convenience, I've written in where the old models exist. Experimental Tech, because all these mechs are like really. I think I basically, before I decided I think in the previous video that I'd done on my like the 2nd Battalion, I talked about how I wanted all those mechs to be the new mechs that came in around 3050, because there was like obviously a huge explosion in technology after the clans invaded because of all the reverse engineering that went on. So what I've decided to do instead, though, is rather than take that direction, I've just had like a, there's like an Atlas and a Banshee in here, for instance, and they're just the new variants of those, so the more sophisticated variants that come like in that post-clan invasion era or just beforehand during the Renaissance. So it's more, it is very experimental, still very good though. I think there's some really, really solid mechs here. The first Lance is Faust's Ghost. This is actually, I've tied this into the lore, it's probably a little bit too much of a stretch, but Mephistopheles there, which is the Banshee, is actually the same mech, it's the upgraded mech though, of the mercenary outfit that the Dust Counters befriend very early on. That group are called Faust's Pact, they are destroyed, and long story, I'm not going to go too much into it because that will really bore you, but it's the son of the mercenary, of the mech warrior who headed up Faustian Pact. So he comes back and he's like, and this is, in like when does this lens get established? 3060. So at that time he's like probably in his late 30s or something like that. And I don't know, I've not written the story yet, but at first he might be like really belligerent and trying to get the Dust Counters because they were kind of the reason why his mother got killed, but complicated. But eventually, they iron things out and he joins. So that's actually, Mephistopheles is quite I suppose like a sentimental mech in the Dust Counters lore. It starts out as one of the, is it the 3S, which is the really crunchy Banshee, the one that the Lyrans update in around 3026. It's just the incredible Banshee. It's a really, really powerful mech. The 5S is, I think, the upgraded version from that, so even more powerful. With the Banshee, there stands the Atlas, and then I've put in a Hauptmann and an Enfield. The Hauptmann's a bit of a mad mech. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a dog that's smoking a cigar, and the cigar is a small laser. I really like it anyway. It's a derpy looking mech. It's almost like the Lyran equivalent of the Panther. Like the Panther looks a little bit silly with those ears. The Hauptmann is very similar to that. The Hauptmann as well, just if you didn't know, he's one of the military ranks in the Lyran Commonwealth. So I think the lore on it is that it was named the Hauptmann just to kind of celebrate all the Hauptmanns across the Lyran Commonwealth. And the Enfield there as well. And I wanted them to announce they were releasing an Enfield, but they haven't in Wave 3. So I went back and bought the old model because it's a mech I have a great affinity to, because it appears a lot in Mech Commander 2. And if you've watched me before, you'll know that I love Mech Commander 2. Next up, we've got the Ides of March, which is again all from the two mechs there from the new Wave 3. The Gunslinger, actually I shouldn't say that. The Gunslinger's in the mercenary unit, so that will be in the Northwind Highlanders box, I think. And then a Caesar as well. The Caesar is a mech that I love. Really, really great mech. That is a mech though that again we know it's coming. It will be involved somewhere in the Kickstarter, but we don't know what box sets it's going to be in. And then to supplement that, I've put in a Helios and a Cossack. The Cossack's not the greatest mech, but I quite like the model. These above, you can see they're just from the Mech Warriors where that lore ties in. They're basically, these are mechs that are created in St. Ives. St. Ives is a military power that only exists for a few more years. At this period that we're in 3061 when we're talking about this lance. I think the St. Ives is enfolded back or annexed back into the Capellan Confederation in 3064. So it's kind of at the end of their tenure. And in my mind, it's like, because the St. Ives are still creating a lot of really good mechs. They still have that like Capellan ingenuity and are making good machines. So I wanted to kind of... also, the Dust Counters have a real connection with St. Ives, like historically. So it makes sense to do that. And it's some of the new tech. So I really wanted to reflect that. And then finally, and this is I probably documented this on the previous video I did on the Dust Counters mercenary outfit building, because I've painted them up quite a while ago. That's a Lao Hu, a Tai Tsang, a Wraith, and a Vindicator. Very Capellan, obviously, and if you know anything about me, you know that I love my Capellan mechs. They are superb, so very, very Capellan. Really wanted to get a Lao Hu as well into my force because it's one of my favourite mechs, is the Lao Hu. Absolutely love it. The Tai, I've said this correctly, the Tai San is one of the crunchiest mechs in BattleTech. It's a complete cheat code of a mech. It's got the triple strength myoma armor. I think that's what it's called. And it's basically when you go above a certain threshold on the heat, your mech can just run really quickly, and it does like double melee damage. And it's got a big old axe, so it's a crazy mech, just insanely powerful. It can be quite a game changer, actually. I played with it recently a couple of times on tabletop, and it is really, really crunchy. Wraith in there as well. They announced the Wraith in the Alpha Strike box set, and it's a model I absolutely love, so I'm happy to get that. And then we got the Vindicator there, and that's going to be the new Vindicator from the beginners box set. Now, really important to note, this is the 5L version, and it's the version with the sword. So I'll need to kind of get that into the my own mech bay to get a sword on there, because the mech it certainly isn't the one with the sword when we're getting the Vindicator in the new beginner box set. And now we've got our final battalion here. This is the Cadet and Support Battalion, and important to say that some of this actually, marches on paper. So some of it is like there's no model for it. It's just to kind of represent that the dust counters do have access to like artillery, mines, fighter planes, bombers, things like that. I've said this before numerous times, but I actually used the new Catalyst cards for like the support stuff like that. So rather than like actually bringing planes to tabletop, which I hate, I just think it's really, really bad gaming system. I'm not directing that at BattleTech. That is something across all platforms where you try to do a like ground with air forces on the same battlefield. It just never works for me. It's garbage. So I'd much rather just have something that represents the fact that there is artillery and mines and air support, as opposed to having to go and do all the terrible rules that they wrote a long time ago for BattleTech, and which are really not very good and very, very like almost like difficult to get your head around. It's not fun. I'd highly advise that anyone look at those card systems you can buy from Catalyst before you go and invest quite a bit of money in like aerotech and fighter planes and things like that. Important to note that doesn't cover VTOLs. VTOLs just operate like tanks. It's just that they're in the sky. They've got a slightly different rule set attached to them, but it's not anything like as complicated as you get for like fighter planes, where you've got to deal with like height, where they're at, what speed they're traveling at. It's just a bit chaotic and not very fun. Anyway, so this one, the Cadet Company first. So this is split into what is originally 2 lances, but then they update them to 2 demi companies, so that there are 12 then in the entire company. And we've got Palisade and Striders in there. That's the both demi companies. The first one is very much just like a for want of a better term, an urban protection force, or like a garrison demi company or lance. You can see there's a lot of like beat up old mechs, things like like a Locust, an urban mech, an old like regular B1 Blackjack. Although they do update these mechs as the eras go on, as you can see there. Like in, I've got that. There are different variants depending on what area we're playing in, so they don't get left behind. Because a BJ1 Blackjack's not going to do very well during the clan invasion. Let's just say that. The Strider Company, which is going to be completely comprised of mechs that I really want, but they're not very good. I say that, the Javelin I think is actually a very good mech. The Assassin and the Quick Draw, not so much. Then I've got the Ost series in there, because I must have the Ost series. Can't not have that, so it's got to fit in somewhere in the dust counters. I've never been a massive fan of the Ost series, to be honest, but they're just they're so different in BattleTech, because their names are all linked together, and it's kind of through the same factory, and it's a bit different. And when we know that we're getting the new models for them, I just really did want to include them somewhere. Next up, we've got the Cavalry Company. This is basically split between light cav and heavy cav, and now I can start to fit the new Vehicles in there that we know we're going to get. So you can see the light cav there, which is all these are basically light vehicles. So there's the Pegasus, there's the Pinto VTOL. What I'm going to do for the Pinto, I'm actually going to use the new Warrior Attack helicopter to do that, because it looks, I've got lots of Warrior Attack helicopters, but they're the old metal ones and they're quite small and sleek. The plastic Warrior Attack helicopter looks a lot more sturdy. It really looks like a nice model. So I thought, well, I'll upgrade that to a Pinto because it looks heavier than my regular Warrior Attack helicopters anyway. And the Pinto is actually a very, very solid VTOL. I think from memory, it's got 3 M lasers and an LRM-5. And it's fast as well, so yeah, I was quite pleased that they're releasing the Warrior Attack helicopter so I can do that. 1 Badger tracked infantry transport, 1 Warrior VTOL, which I spoke about already. So that's really kind of fast and manoeuvrable. It's there to, through that Badger infantry support as well. I've got some dust counter infantry that you can see from earlier, so they can be used to transport those soldiers. Next up, we got the heavy cav section. So this is comprised of the Ontos tracked vehicle, a Morigu, which is a clan tracked vehicle, a Zhukov tracked vehicle, which I really like the Zhukov, really, really solid tank, and then 2 Maxim hover infantry transports. Maxims I really, really like. They're really, really solid like hover platforms. Not much more to talk about them. I mean, the Ontos and the Maxim are new models that we're getting, so they'll be getting folded into this when I obviously get access to Wave 3. And then we've got here Bandier Company. So this is basically, Bombardier is probably a bit of a weird name for this group, but it's basically half a squad of fighter bomber aerospace fighters. No models for them, obviously, but just to reflect that they do exist with their dust counters. And then we've got 2 Shreks, 2 Demolishers, a Goliath quad, and a Scorpion quad. So that's just when you really need to kind of take the pain to the enemy. And basically, well, the 2 Shreks have, 6 PPCs between them. And the 2 Demolishers have 4 AC-20s between them. And then you've got the quad mechs there who basically just walk along, firing off LRMs and, the munitions that they've got. So that's pretty cool, I think. And then finally, we've got the Artillery Company. This is split between support artillery and ranged artillery. They did announce they were going to do a Skulker wheeled vehicle in the next Kickstarter. I'd never even heard of that vehicle, but it's a really interesting one. It's basically just like a little spotting vehicle. It's got 1 M laser on it, and it's in the rear, which is quite telling because it's just going to be running away from the enemy because it's barely got any armor. And I'm going to basically, some of these have no model. So like the conventional load of VTOL, there's no model for that. That's just to reflect that, when the artillery needs to kind of gun up, they can get the munitions to them very quickly. Mobile mine layer, the Skulker we've talked about, and then there's a Shagosa and a Patron who are loader mechs. And I kind of have it in my mind that they're part of the load of the VTOL loaders will deliver the munitions, and then the Shagosa and the Patron will then go and kind of deliver it where it needs to be delivered to the artillery. And then there is the ranged artillery section, which is comprised of a mobile thumper cannon, a mobile long-term cannon, and then the LRM carrier and SRM carrier, of which I'm going to do 2 of each. They're going to be new models as well, so excited to get those and see those. I think the old SRM carriers I really like. The old LRM carriers, though, are really weird. It's a very, very strange model, so I'm not sure if that's going to be reflected in the new variants. Hopefully they update it a little bit and make it look a little bit more like an LRM platform. And that's it. That brings me to the end of the regiment. So they're the 3 battalions there. I think, again, it is subject to change. Every time I do a video on this, like probably next week, I'll have another idea and add something else in. I can't see myself going over regimental level, though. That is, I never wanted the dust counters to be bigger than a regiment anyway. That's kind of where I had them at in terms of size, in and around like 30-60. So either, if I wanted to create more than a regiment, I'd really kind of have to get into the Word of Blake stuff and the Jihad. And maybe at that point they'd expand, but I've got very little intention of doing that because I really don't like the Word of Blake time period. So for me, it would be like the dust counters finish when the FedCom Alliance finishes. Maybe they get bought out by someone, maybe they get destroyed. At that time, my main characters are getting on. You know, that's Lemuel Durant and Samantha Durant. They're the kind of original founders. They'd be in their 60s by that time. So yeah, it's not, you know, they're not. It's not something where I want them to go on forever or anything. You know, like we get with the Grey Death Legion where they reappear in the 3050s. I could do something like that though. I've thought about that. Like if I do get into like the Ilkhan era, which is, there's a possibility that might happen. It's just I really don't like anything from. I'll just say it like this: everything from 3067 to like 3150. The stuff I've read for it just looks a bit of a nightmare and a bit of a write-off for me. If though they really kind of pick up over the next few years with the Ilkhan, I'll get back into that, and maybe I can do what the Grey Death Legion did and say, okay, well the second cousin of Samantha Durant recreates the Dusk Haunters or whatever. I don't know. Probably won't do that, but at the moment, I think Regiment is a really nice size. It's, you know, there's a lot of mechs there, there's a lot of vehicles, there's a lot of lore. You can see there I've built in quite a lot of stories and you know, like, which is reflected in the battle mechs. Anyway, that's about it. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Just to re-emphasize that point, if you don't collect your own mercenary unit, I'd absolutely advise you do it. It's so fun. It's just such a great like segue into the BattleTech universe. I don't think there's a better way to do that. I think when you're forced to kind of go and research it for yourself, you just learn so much about what's going on. I certainly have done. I've learnt more in the last like year, really kind of getting into the Dusk Haunters collection than I've ever learnt in BattleTech before. And I did, you know, I was really into it as a kid, but the stuff I know now, and obviously a lot of that is because now I have the internet, and when I was, 12 years old, the internet was, you know, it existed, but it certainly, there wasn't the Sana.com, for instance. So, you know, I think like now, if you really want to get into BattleTech, is a wonderful time. I've said this numerous times over the last few weeks. The mercenary units are a really, really good segue into the deeper lore, because I do hold to the fact that the mercenary units should be the alpha and omega of BattleTech. Everything else is window dressing. If you can kind of build a solid mercenary group, then you can just experience anything you want to in BattleTech. Anyway, I'll leave that there. So hopefully that was some food for thought for you as well, like what you want to do with your mercenary outfit. You can see there like how I've done it just across those chronological eras, and just kept building and building, and now I've kind of got to that regiment level, and fingers crossed that's it, and I don't come back in another 2 months and say, actually, I've decided to go full division or something crazy. I don't think that will happen though. I'd probably have to buy a new house to keep it all in. So yeah, that could be a tough ask. Anyway, I'll thank you very much for watching, and I'll hopefully catch you again next time.